Hello, and welcome to the new podcast of the Michigan Public Service Commission. At least once a month, we're going to be bringing you our latest insights on energy, telecommunications, and what they mean for you, our fellow Michiganders. We'll also share more about our work and answer your questions. I'm your host, Mike Byrne, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Commission, where I've worked for 14 years. During each episode, I'll be joined by at least one of our commissioners or other special guests to dive into topics that impact your daily life, from energy efficiency and renewable energy to expanding broadband access across our state. So today, I'm really excited to be kicking off this podcast. I'm dressed up to be able to reflect the moment, and I'm joined by not one but all three MPSC commissioners. Commissioners, thank you so much for being here today. I want to start by letting you each introduce yourselves to our listeners. So, Chair Scripps, I will start with you.
Thanks, Mike, and I am sadly underdressed for this inaugural episode of the podcast. But I'm Dan Scripps. I'm the chair of the commission. I grew up, born and raised in Michigan, born in Grand Rapids, and grew up in central Michigan, first Mount Pleasant, and then Alma, where I went to both high school and then Alma College after that. I'm a lawyer by background. I worked in energy law in both here in Michigan and in D.C., and served one term in the Michigan House of Representatives, representing 4 counties in northwest Michigan: Mason, Manistee, Benzie, and Leelanau County, where I still live in Leelanau County. I was appointed to the commission in 2019, named chair in 2020, so I've been on now for about 5 years, and one of the things that, nearly 6, I guess, time flies when you're having fun. One of the things that's maybe interesting about the appointment process is that I was appointed in the midst of the winter storm in 2019. If you all remember, we got the text from the state police asking us to please turn down our thermostats to keep the energy system intact, and it was just a fascinating time to join the commission, sort of out of the frying pan into the fire in terms of learning what the commission does, how interconnected our energy systems are, and how important they are to the lives of Michiganders all across our state. So excited to launch this and looking forward to the discussion today.
Great, thank you very much. Let's turn to Commissioner Paratic.
Thanks, Mike. I'm really excited that we're doing this, really excited to be on this podcast. I'm Catherine Paratic. I'm one of the other commissioners on the Public Service Commission. I was appointed in January of 2021. I'm an energy engineer by training. I have a undergrad degree in mechanical engineering and a master's degree in energy systems engineering. So I've been focused on energy for my entire career. I was also born and raised in Michigan and spent all of my elementary, high school, and college education all in the Ann Arbor area. After I graduated, I joined a series of energy companies, starting off in wind and then moving to energy storage. The first company that I joined in energy storage, this was back in, I think, 2014, so way before energy storage was cool and anybody knew anything about how it worked or what its benefits were, except for the very few of us that were part of the energy storage scene at that time. We were inventing a new form of compressed air energy storage. So this was a isothermal compressed air energy storage facility that operated on underground salt caverns, and I ended up building 2 of those projects, one in Texas and one in Ontario, when I moved over onto the development side. So developed a compressed air energy storage project in Ontario, along with a flywheel energy storage project and a lithium-ion battery, and also a virtual power plant in downtown Toronto. So took a long energy storage journey to get here, but then joined the commission and have been just really enjoying my time now serving the public ever since.
Great, thank you. And finally, we'll turn to Commissioner Carrion.
Wonderful, thank you. So I was appointed to the commission in July of 2023. Immediately prior to my appointment, I was working at a clean energy NGO called RMI. I focused on carbon-free transportation, so transportation electrification with an aim to ensure equitable access, affordability, and accessible charging infrastructure. Along with that, I also launched an initiative around battery circularity, which leveraged many years and a lot of really wonderful experiences working at Ford Motor Company in sustainability, supply chain sustainability, and responsible sourcing. So I have very much this global perspective around the interconnectedness of materials in a sustainable transportation infrastructure. So it was really, I'd say I was really happy to join the MPSC, in a moment of transportation electrification sort of coming to the forefront and achieving a scalability that is unprecedented for our state and for the world. So I was happy that I had the chance to weave that in. But before Ford and my time at RMI, I had actually spent a few years in environmental consulting and engineering. So my background is as a chemical engineer. So you have two engineers and a lawyer at the commission, which is really wonderful perspectives. And also have an MBA from Ross, the business school at U of M. So that's kind of the technical background. I grew up moving every couple of years. My dad was in the Navy, so I call it a privilege to have chosen my home in Michigan. I live in Detroit with my family. And one fun fact is that I also used to own and operate a pizzeria, which I often like to cite as one of my key skills to apply at the commission, making pizza. So it's great to be here, and I'm excited for this podcast.
Great, thank you.
And I would just add, I appreciate you sharing your skills both as an engineer and as a pizza maker. We've benefited from both of those.
Indeed. All right, so I think it's great to meet all of you and understand your differing backgrounds, but how complementary they are, and how that relates to the work that we do here. But I guess a question at the outset here might be, why are we doing a podcast? Why now? Why has the commission chosen to launch this effort? So maybe Commissioner Paratek, I'll turn to you to help answer that question.
Sure. Yeah. We've really been trying to find the right way of communicating the work that we do and providing transparency into the work that we do here at the commission for a while. And as part of those efforts, we hosted a public hearing in Flint on August 28th of this year on engagement opportunities, and wanting to hear from the public, inviting anybody who wanted to come and talk to us about how we can be better engaging with the public and explaining the work that we're doing and allowing for better public input into our work. We had some really fantastic answers and ideas that came from the public as part of that hearing. And one of them was from an advocate who's a frequent participant in many of our cases at the commission. And he specifically said to us that we need to do a better job at communicating the work of the MPSC publicly. At one of the breaks at that public hearing, Alessandra and I walked down into the audience along with a few of our staff members, and wanted to talk to him a little bit more about that idea, about how we can actually do a better job, and if he had any ideas. And one of the things that he brought up was a podcast, and how using multiple forms of communication that are outside of our traditional methods would be really valuable. And he thought that would be helpful to communicating better and to driving public input into our decision-making process, and just making us seem more accessible and come across as real people, not just writing orders and then issuing them, and create those and give better explanations of the work that we do. So we were really interested in that and excited about that. And it turns out that our fantastic communications team was already in the works, developing just exactly that, this idea for a podcast. Both Rika Holly-Velker and Jamie Curris came to us and said, this is something that we think would be a good idea. So it was a little bit of a confluence of ideas, both from the public, from that engagement session, and also from our communications team internally. So I'm hoping that we'll be successful at that this will be able to actually communicate more of the work that we do in a more accessible way.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things is that this has been sort of a journey for us as well, that the traditional line that you often have heard from the commission over the years is that the commission speaks through its orders. And we do. I mean, when we're adjudicating cases, that is ultimately the result of the work, is that the orders, those formal legal documents that we put out. But those orders can run multiple hundreds of pages, and often it's difficult to understand exactly what goes into those. It's a highly sort of litigated process. It looks a lot like court proceedings. Not the easiest thing for the public to understand and digest. And so over the past couple of years, we've taken, I think, a number of steps to try and sort of pull back the curtain on what we do, including things like issuing issue briefs on major cases, or explainers on some of the sort of larger areas of energy and telecommunications that we're involved in, and how a particular decision or set of decisions fit within a broader context. We recently initiated what we call the MPSC Spotlight, which is a more public-focused monthly newsletter that goes out. But there's a difference even with that, like the difference between sort of written words in an issue brief and a newsletter versus something that people can literally download and listen to on their phones or while driving around our beautiful state. And so I think the idea of moving into a podcast, doing things in multiple forms of media, just allows us to be a little more accessible to people who may not be spending all day on their computers reading what's coming out of the commission.
And if I can build on what you just shared, Dan, I think this idea of trying to translate or make accessible complex issues in simple ways is really important. And I think the beauty of this podcast is that ultimately we'll be able to do that not just from our perspective as regulators, but inviting different guests, different perspectives to explain this, broader ecosystem or just topics in a way that might be accessible or makes sense to different people who, are interested in different things. So just the diversity and the variety of what we'll be able to cover and the perspectives that we'll be able to chime in, I think will be, one of the most valuable parts of this podcast.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
All right, so the commission speaks through its orders, but the commissioners explain through their podcast. I think that's kind of where it's at.
Is that our new tagline?
Yeah, everything's new. All right, so maybe let's next turn to the PSC, the Public Service Commission, and sort of who we are and how we do our work. And so, Chair Scripps, I wonder if you can kick that off for us.
Sure. So the Public Service Commission traces its history back to 1873, when the legislature formed the Michigan Railroad Commission. So last year we celebrated 150 years of regulation. We might have been the only ones, but I think it's important. And it really came out of this idea that, railroads initially were sort of the initial monopoly. They provided a vital public service, but monopolies tend towards monopolistic behavior. And so the idea was to put in place at each state, and each state has one of us, a check on that, so that the benefits of delivering core essential services that often are natural monopolies could be checked and made sure that they were operating in the public interest in delivering those. We've had a number of iterations over time, but in 1939, the legislature essentially reformed us into what we are today, the Michigan Public Service Commission. And we have 3 commissioners. We're all appointed by the governor, subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. And I think that gives the governor chooses, but it still needs buy-in from the legislative branch. And I think that reflects a level of both sort of cooperation between the different branches of government, but also after that process, we serve for staggered 6-year terms, which are longer than the terms of the governor or the legislature, and we're staggered. So it means that there's some level of independence from the political winds in order to make decisions about long-term infrastructure that we oversee. And I think those are important pieces, but maybe the most important is that we're a creature of statute, that the legislature created us. Over time, they've given us our responsibilities, and at times they've changed our responsibilities. At one time, for example, we had authority over the ferry services that went to Mackinac Island and some other islands, that they were seen as natural monopolies in the way that other natural monopolies, electric, natural gas, telecommunications, railroads back in the day. And at a later point in time, that authority was sort of removed by the legislature. So it is very much that the legislature sets the parameters of what we do. We need to follow the law in deciding our cases, and the legislature ultimately is the ultimate authority for what we have oversight over.
Great. And can you talk a little bit about what we have oversight over? What do we regulate, and sort of how are those things similar, and maybe some differences that
Sure. So the core focus is on energy and telecommunications. And so it's natural gas service, the companies that deliver natural gas to the 75% of Michiganders who use gas as their primary heating. We also have authority over the siting of natural gas infrastructure, the pipelines that transport it around the state. On the electric side, it's the electric companies, and we also have 10% of our market that's reserved for competition, and so licensing of those alternative electric suppliers, the siting of high voltage transmission lines, and recently the siting of certain large renewable energy projects in partnership with local communities where that process still needs to commence. On the telecommunications side, it's a little different. There have been a series of efforts to essentially reform telecommunications that took place at the national level and then in Michigan as well. And so we don't have this, they don't operate in the same way. We don't approve rates and tariffs for the telecommunications providers, but we still have an important role in licensing them, in overseeing things like how they participate in 911 services, and ultimately some of the work in partnership with other parts of state government in mapping broadband and trying to facilitate the availability of broadband and high-speed internet for a greater percentage of the people of Michigan. So it's in some ways sort of a very traditional model. In some ways it's been updated to reflect where the legislature has gone and where the federal government has gone in areas like telecommunications.
Yeah, that was a fantastic explanation. You always do such a good job of explaining what we do, and that's why I am so happy to be able to work with you. But really at its core is that it's our job to ensure safety, accessibility, and reliability of energy and telecommunication services at reasonable rates. That's really what it comes down to. It sounds so simple when you say it like that, but it's a huge job.
And so I guess a question at this point is why is it important that Michiganders know what the commission is and what we do? And maybe Commissioner Carey, I'll turn to you.
Sure. So as we've just said, or as we've been discussing so far, our decisions affect virtually all customers of the entities we regulate. So that's commercial, industrial customers, that's residential customers. And from a residential perspective, or actually any customer's perspective, I can imagine it feels very frustrating if you know that there is something so massive, a service that you can't do without, but you don't understand how it gets to you, and you don't understand your role in how it's operated or managed. And so I think the reason that it's so important for Michiganders to know what the commission does is that it gives an opportunity, one, to understand how to engage in these highly complex legal proceedings or procedures that we are part of, that we administer, but also to just get a better understanding of ultimately what the expectations are around the service you obtain, and what, to Commissioner Baratik's or Catherine's point just now, what you can expect around that safe, reliable, and accessible system. I think what I really want to drive home here is that starting with awareness and education, or access to information for the services that we regulate, can really make a big difference in ensuring that one, how the difference between regulation or the implementation of policy that Dan mentioned as laws change, but that also then you might have a better understanding of the role of policymakers, which we are not in our function. We aren't making the policies, we're implementing them. We're the creatures of statute. So I think just some of these nuanced differences are key, and ultimately with some of the new laws that came out in 2023, there's really a vested interest in ensuring there's more public participation in the way we do our work. So having that direct pathway to knowing how the laws work, what we do, how you can engage more, I think just brings a better sense of agency to then what the expectation for the service is, and ultimately if there are improvements, where they need to occur, and what the roles are in ensuring this improved system.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, energy is so fundamental to every piece of our lives. When we wake up in the morning and having the heat on a chilly day, the electricity as people are working remotely, but also, it powers literally every facet of our lives. And I think the goal is that people, increasingly take all of that for granted. until it doesn't work. But I think the goal is that if it's that fundamental, it needs to be something that we're able to take for granted. We don't take it for granted. I think we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to make sure that it is reliable, safe, and reasonably priced. And that piece, I think, takes an awful lot of work to make happen. I should have done this at the beginning. My dad's an orchestra conductor, and one of the things he says that when you go see a great orchestra, you sort of think, what's the big deal? And then you realize, it's a whole lot of people who are at the top of their game, who are working really hard to make it look easy. And so the goal, I think, is that if people wake up in the morning and turn on the lights come on, we've done our job. And so that piece, I think, is something that sometimes gets lost outside of this building, but it really does touch every Michigander and a whole lot of their lives.
That's great. Thank you. So I think at this point, I'd love to sort of learn a little bit more about each of you and try to understand what made you want to become a commissioner and maybe what your favorite part of the job is. What do you like most about doing this work? So Chair, I'll start with you.
Sure. I wanted to be this was in some ways a dream job when I got appointed. It was when Governor Whitmer came into office, there were a number of positions open. I didn't think this one was open as soon as it did. It ultimately was former commissioner and current state treasurer Rachel Eubanks, who moved over to the treasurer's role, where she's just been killing it for the last 6 years. I mean, we've got the best state treasurer in the country in my mind, but it created an opening, and it really was, when you're looking at sort of how energy works and how the energy transition that we're all experiencing works, this is where the rubber hits the road. And so it's what I really wanted to do. I felt like I could contribute, that my background and skill set could be useful here. And I'll say my favorite part, there's probably two. One is that it's endlessly fascinating, that no 2 days are the same, that the little wrinkles in some of our cases are sometimes the most interesting parts. They don't always get the headlines, but it's really the choice that maybe puts us on a better path, hopefully puts us on a better path, and really sort of affects people's lives and how ultimately energy is generated and delivered, as well as telecommunication services and the sort of constant stream of innovation that we see on that part. So that's one of my favorite parts. Fascinating, always interesting, no 2 days are the same. But the other one, and it's just as important, is that the people of the commission, this place feels like a family. And I didn't realize that when I joined, but I certainly feel it today. And that people are genuinely interested in the work that we do together, are genuinely good to each other, want to see us succeed, understand that public service is what we bring to our jobs every single day. And I will say that in my 6 years nearly on the commission, I have been blessed with some of the most talented and thoughtful commissioners in the country. And that's been true since when I joined with Sally Talberg and Norm Sari, who were just both giants, Tremaine Phillips, who I had the chance to work with and the privilege to work with for a number of years, and the two colleagues that I get to share this work with today. Catherine and Alessandra are seen rightly as national leaders on a whole range of issues. And when we go to national conferences, what I hear over and over again is, how did you get so lucky to have all-stars the whole time? And I don't know. I give a lot of credit to the governor. I give a lot of credit to the past governor, that we have a good thing going in Michigan. And the people working together around a common mission, I think, has delivered real results to the people of Michigan, and also has made it, for me at least, a lot of fun to do.
That's fantastic. And I echo everything that you said. This is a great team, and working from the top down to everybody who's within the organization. There's just, it is a family atmosphere, and folks do want to see each other succeed. Commissioner Paratig, how about you?
Yeah, thanks. I feel equally as privileged to be able to work with both of you and you, Alessandra. Like this, it's just such a great team that we have, and all of our staff is just absolute experts in their fields. So why did I want to be a commissioner? I mean, public service commissions are probably not the best known organizations in general, but not even in state government. We are not. I've heard us called obscure many times, an obscure organization. So why would someone want to dedicate this much time and effort to a position that no one really knows about? And the reason for me is because of the incredible impact that it has. this is not about being well known. It's about if it was, I chose the wrong job. But it's about the impact that we can actually have on Michiganders. It's the customer impact. It's the impact on our energy security and our energy mix and the clean energy transition. It's the impact on reliability and affordability and making sure that we have all of the services that we actually need. I like I mentioned in my introduction, I'm a energy engineer by training, which I think I was the first engineer that was actually appointed to the Public Service Commission that we could at least find in history, and now I have the privilege of being able to serve with another one as well. But I think that technical background, I was able to bring some unique perspectives to the commission, and be able to take that expertise and that knowledge that I had previously and be able to implement that into improving our energy system, our energy mix, reliability, affordability, and all of that. So I feel like it's been just an incredibly rewarding experience over the last 4 years that I've been able to be in this role. And that really is my favorite aspect about this, is just knowing that I am actually having an impact alongside being supported and advised by just an incredibly strong team that we have at the commission, to the point where we are just working every single day to serve our state the best we can.
Outstanding. Commissioner Carrion, how about you?
I don't know, Catherine. I mean, everyone in my chemical engineering class wanted to be a commissioner when we graduated. Every single one of them. We all knew what the job was, what it entailed. That was our. No, I will say, this point about how do we best apply our skills, our talents, our backgrounds, pizza making aside, I think it was really what drew me to this job. I mentioned earlier in my intro, my career background has been in global sustainability and I'll say decarbonization or environmental sustainability, but at the end of the day, what that meant was protecting people, protecting the planet in the best way that any organization I was part of could. And I think one of my favorite parts of this job is that it is so clear, as Catherine and Dan, you both indicated, our work directly impacts the public, and we, this group of people, strive to make sure that that's always as best and positive an impact that we can possibly make it within our mission and our purview and our authority. So just that motivation to do the best we can and make sure that the impact that we have is the best it possibly can be for the people of the state with such wonderful experts is really why I'm here, what I love about this job. And ultimately, from like a very practical aspect, I appreciate that you brought that up too. Makes my engineering heart sing. A lot, the work that we do is so systems based, and so that can get kind of esoteric and maybe feel a little abstract, but at the end of the day, it has an impact on an individual or a family's household, on a business's bottom line, on an entire industry. So I can just see the effects and the impact of the work that we do here in our state, at so many levels, and it really is an honor and a privilege to be part of the MPSC, which we are now going to make the most widely and well-known department in the whole state of Michigan.
Hey, if this podcast takes off the way that we hope it does, then that'll definitely be part of it. So, again, I'm really excited that we're doing this. I'm excited to be working with all of you for all of the reasons that you talked about today. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you to everyone who's listening. We do hope to do this at least once a month, and we hope that you'll join us as we continue on this journey. So, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.